Have you ever wondered if the main character from Dark Souls, the chosen undead, the legend, John Dark Souls himself, would survive in the harsh world of the Lands Between? No? Well, thanks for clicking on the video anyway, because that is what we aim to answer today. Can John Dark Souls beat Elden Ring? On the surface, this is a pretty simple run. Beat Elden Ring, but only use the abilities and items that the chosen undead would have access to. But it's actually one of those iceberg things that gets weird in conspiracy depending on how deep you go. As such, for me, there are two groups of okay-to-use items. The first group is things that match exactly. For example, the Claymore exists and is a great sword in both games, thus totally fine to use. The second group is close enough spiritual successors. These are things that do not match exactly, but functionally are the same. For example, Flame Sling is not the same as Fireball, but it kind of is. Or, more importantly, Smithing Stones and Graces are not Titanite Shards and Bonfires, but they are, you know what I mean? Because of this kinda lax definition, I'm sure there will be at least one thing I will do or use that you'll disagree with, dear viewer, and that's totally fine. This isn't a Neo video, it's safe to have an opinion here. The main objective is to simply beat the game and become Elden Lord as the chosen undead. As such, I won't actually be full clearing all remembrances. Radabeast is the goal, anything else is just icing, though I will be looking to take on some of the more uber bosses just for the flex. But first, make sure to cast your vote in the comments below to rather this is the easiest challenge ever or if it's impossible. And now sit back, relax, grab a drink, or don't, I'm not your mother. Seriously, the test came back negative, stop asking for your allowance, and enjoy. Right off the bat, we have a choice to make. The good news is that pretty much every class has a weapon that exactly matches a Dark Souls 1 weapon. The bad news is only two classes actually match Dark Souls 1 classes, Warrior and Bandit. I ended up going with Warrior as the Scimitar is an exact match for being in Dark Souls 1, whereas the Bandit class starts with the Great Knife. It's clearly meant to be the Bandit Knife, but it's not a bandit knife. Yes, I'm being a proctologist's most difficult patient right now, and no, I do not say this uptight throughout the whole run. That actually happens sooner than you think as I take the Crimson Amber Medallion. This ups HP and is the equivalent of the Tiny Beings Ring. John Dark Souls then spawns into the Not Undead Asylum, and immediately we strip naked and remove all his armor, second scimitar, and shield. On my way to the Grafted Scion, I was hit with visions of the worst Dark Souls game and took so much psychic damage I had to throw myself off the ledge. Talk about glow-ups, should have appreciated Firelink more back then. I grab this funny looking Titanite shard off an anvil, then sit at the funny looking bonfire until this woman shows up.
Have you heard of the Finger Maidens?
Ma'am, this is a family friendly show. Yeah, just write your number down here. So Melina back there offered to turn my runes into strength. Leveling up is totally fine, but she also gave me a horse, which is not totally fine. As such, it looks like I'm in for a marathon. Half this run is, well, running. Eventually, I arrive at the Third Church of America, intent on grabbing the Wondrous Physic, as a couple of the tiers do have DS1 item equivalents. But the Physic itself is not an item in the game, so never mind, I was just out for the cardio. I feel like I'm playing Pokemon with his tiny knee-high jump blocking me from progressing. Whatever, I make my way into Castle Morn, and while getting maimed, I pick up a classic, the Claymore. With sword in hand and Claymore in sheath, I return to Stormveil to prepare for Margit. Here comes the first of many controversial decisions. I decided to use a Sacred Tear to increase my flask's healing. Yes, Sacred Tears, and for that matter the Crimson Flask, are not a thing in Dark Souls. But you can increase your SS power with Firekeeper Souls, so I'm allowing it. To a point. I decided at the beginning 5 flasks plus 3 is the max, then if and when I get past Morgott to the midpoint of the game, I unlock Kindling and can increase it to 8 and plus 5. The first attempt on Margit went surprisingly well considering I haven't played this game in like a year. As you can imagine though, despite being underleveled, undergeared, and under restrictions, the fight isn't particularly difficult. But I will say one thing, I actually started this run a long time ago, as in when the DLC first came out. This was my intended first challenge through the DLC, but obviously that didn't happen. I then restarted the run at a later date, but had some IRL things come up, so paused it for about a month and a half. Why did I tell you that? Because Margit is about as interesting as a sack of socks. He attempts to live on 1 HP in a dream, but I am the main character of this run, so he falls, dropping a talisman pouch. Then Melina shows up and asks me to hold her hand, which is how I know this isn't real. She whisks me away to the Round Table Hold, where I can buy the Knight set and upgrade my Claymore once, then level up strength a few times. Back in Stormveil, I have a choice. I can either go the back way in or through the front gate. However, it's not actually a choice, as with the back way you need to do a little jump. As such, the only option is, do I get murdered now or later? Trick question, it was both. For the first time in my life, I decided to lead the troll over to the statue for some free shards, then I head back to the Round Table Hold to level up my Claymore some more. So, I guess this is as good a time as any to mention the arbitrary decision I have where I can only level regular weapons to plus 15 and sombers to plus 5. Technically, from a game design point, if you look at it from a 0 to 100% scale, then in Dark Souls 100% just happens to be 15, whereas in Elden Ring it's 25, but hey, what's the fun in that? Probably should level health a little bit though, huh? Anyway, here is where I make a fatal mistake. Did you see that? I reposted after a stance break. That's not something you can do in Dark Souls. I bring this up for 2 reasons. 1, so you can all shame me as a phony in the comments if you please, and 2, because I wanted to tell you guys how restrictive this run actually is, or at least has the potential to be. So, here is a short but not exhaustive list of what you can't do. Ahem. No torrent, no jumping, no charged attacks, no jump attacks, no riposte after stance breaks, no guard counters, no remembrances or rune arcs, no respecs, no stakes of America, no effects that didn't exist in Dark Souls 1, no crafting, no leveling mind or arcane, no blue flask, no power stancing, no more than 2 talismans, no physics, you get the point. It's a lot more than you think, and it's not even including all the weapons and armor you can't use. The only other one worth mentioning, I suppose, is stamina, specifically the fact that the Tarnished can sprint forever when not in combat. It did occur to me to time myself, sprint for 5 seconds, walk for 3 to simulate running out and letting it build back up, but no, I'm okay. Anyway, back to the matter at Dragon Hand, I am going to allow stance break riposte because I honestly just didn't think about it, and by the time I realized, I was already well into the run. Fun fact though, in my original attempt way back when, I also fucked up on Godric by charging heavies with the Claymore. This run really is a fight with muscle memory. Anyway, he's dead and that's one of 2 required shard bearers down. So I started running. And I kept running, and I ran and ran until I got to the worst place I could find, hell on earth. My reason for coming to Caelid was to try and get a better weapon. I wanted the Ultra Greatsword, the Greatsword. Unfortunately, it's inaccessible without jumping onto the back of the carriage, which I can't do. I did wonder if maybe the dogs or the birds had an attack that would push me up, but more likely it would just push me 6 feet under immediately. So I returned to Liurnia, and man, let me tell you, this place sucks without Torrent. I know there are a lot of teleporters around that can help, but there are no teleporters in Dark Souls 1. Well, unless of course you count the magical hole that has a hand that grips you so good it sends you on a trip through time. Okay YouTube, I'll stop, Jane and I are hungry. In Gate Town, for whatever reason, I decided I would try and fight the Fire Chariot, which put me in the crossfire of 3 flamethrowers. Intelligence is a thing I can level, I probably should. I make my way to the key and then decide to make a stop in the Raya Lucaria crystal tunnels. There are a few free smithing stones here like the ones across this beam and up a short jump. Well, there are others, and I can still beat up the Crystallian who will drop the bell bearing. It's questionable rather I should be able to purchase them, as while you can buy Titanite shards from various vendors, the bell bearings themselves aren't an item, but I'll allow it. If you haven't guessed yet, this run could be retitled The Mental Gymnastic Doom Goes Through to make this interesting and hopefully not boring. At this point, I went back to the Weeping Peninsula to buy a few more, then make my way to the other isolated merchant to buy a beautiful weapon, the Zweihander. Please rate my pronunciation on a scale of 1 to bratwurst, some of you won't get why I'm making that joke. I take it back to the Round Table Hold and upgrade it a couple of times, and I'm just now realizing how ridiculously large this sword is. I mean, look at this thing, it's huge, right Rodrika? Also the Zweihander is I head to Fort Height where I grab half the Dectus medallion for later and return to Liurnia where I step through the door teleporter once again invalidating the run. Okay, that joke is wearing out its welcome, I get it. I wanted to collect the golden seed over here just to bank it for later, but maybe that's off the table. So with that, it's finally time to show the Academy what kind of strength magic I've mastered. I was a tiny bit worried about this lift, I wasn't sure how big the gap was, but with enough height I can just fling myself off the side and it's fine. That means it's time for the Red Wolf who has very little health. And since I don't rely on any illegal maneuvers like jump attacks for this fight, it's over in less than a minute. Now, Moongrum might be annoying as I can't stealth past him. Thankfully, I'll never know because I literally can't get to him. The only way forward is to hop over a railing, and that's not allowed. Technically, the Chosen Undead does have a hop, but it's more of a horizontal jump than a vertical one, so I'm not going to count it. Thinking about it though, it's kinda crazy how easy it is to break into this massive castle. I mean, sure, it's kind of a walk, but there is practically no security in this place, save for Moongrum, of course. If only I could get up to Ronaldo to tell her about today's sponsor, ExpressVPN. So tell me if this has ever happened to you. You're having fun playing Elden Ring, but then you go to Reddit and say, hey man, I don't know, maybe FromSoft didn't peak with this game, and now suddenly 47 elite hackermans are tracing your IP and you need to move to a remote mountain town disconnected from the internet. That whole situation could have been avoided if you had just used ExpressVPN and their best-in-class encryption to secure your connection so no get-goods can ruin your day. Seriously, jokes aside, the internet is a scary place, especially if you go around just connecting to public Wi-Fis without a care in the world. But you can use ExpressVPN to secure your connection so you can browse freely. And it doesn't stop there. That same connection, which to set up is as easy as clicking a button by the way, shields your online activity so your ISP can't log it. That means I can browse Priscilla feet pics all day without some desk warmer thinking I'm a weirdo. But really, since my entire career right now is online, it's actually a super important thing to me to have internet privacy, and ExpressVPN gives me that peace of mind. Not only do they have some of the fastest speeds as they invest in premium servers, but 24/7 support, and at an incredibly affordable rate. It is a great, dare I say, amazing deal. Find out how you can get up to 4 extra months by clicking the link in the description box below, or just type in expressvpn.com/doomwolf. Thanks again, ExpressVPN, not only for sponsoring this video, but for letting me take back my internet. Now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. I then head back to Caelid, intent on going to Dragon Barrow for the other half of the objective medallion, only to remember that there is also another jump. But there is a back way in through a teleporter by the Third Church of America. A teleporter that I have arbitrarily decided not to use. Now, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure if you can get there going the other way through Caelid. You might be able to, but instead of taking the 10 minutes to find out, I decided I would rather just go through the ruin-strewn precipice and hope that there are no places I have to jump. Fortunately, there isn't, so it's time for Makar. Is there an orange charred ring in this game? Second try goes much better. I was honestly surprised by how much damage I was doing. I expected it to be way less considering that this is only +5, I guess it's just the power of the Zwei. That being said, the very first thing I do with Makar's runes is take it back and level up my Zweihander to +8, then put the remaining points into Strength and Vigor. Sorry Lanciax, I do not have time for you, and even if I did, I do not want you, Alexstrasza for life. I was a bit worried here, as the arrows fly much faster in Elden Ring, but they lack any heat-seeking capabilities it seems, so I just kept running and was totally fine. I then wanted to get down to where the second smithing Stormveil bearing was, and at first it was looking like I couldn't, but the rock formation actually does allow you to safely descend, so I do, then grab it. Before taking on Radahn or Draconic Tree Sentinel for that matter, I wanted a higher leveled weapon and a higher leveled me, so I began making my way to the Caria Manor. Obviously I can't use Torrent to jump around the side, saving fractions of a second, but this illusory wall stood no chance against the might of my swing. Before taking on Loretta though, I wanted to get an additional piece of equipment that would help me out. The Arsenal Charm, which raises your max equip load so it is functionally the same as Havel's Ring. Except I forgot you have to jump to get it. Or so I thought. You can actually just fall onto the branch, but this took me several tries and I lost my souls doing so. At the top I claim my prize, the Arsenal Charm, +1, and here is another arbitrary rule. I decided not to allow any talismans that weren't the base form, as in no +1s or +2s. To recoup some of my lost runes, I took out the duo Crystallian fight in the same tunnels. So, where is the regular Arsenal Charm? Well, that is given by Nefeli Lu after you beat Godric, provided you talk to her. That sucks. I went to go see if she was in her original spot, but unfortunately she wasn't there. Then I thought, what if I exhaust Gideon's dialogue to have him move to the library? Maybe that'll do something. And it did. When I loaded back in, she was there. But when I finished her dialogue, she didn't give me anything, and after another reload, she was gone. Wow, talk about Thawfrost balls. Thawfrost balls. Technically, I can get the Great Jar charm. It is stronger than the Arsenal ones, but it's also a level 1 charm, but it's also really far away, and I believe on the other side of a Stone Sword Key Imp Gate, so yeah, that's a no-go. Anyway, where was I? Oh, right, Loretta. She's an easy first try because, I mean, it's Loretta, just don't get blasted by her Quincy arrows and you're fine. I spend those well-earned runes on making my Zweihander a +14, then return to Caelid. Before taking on the general, I wanted to demoralize him by taking on all of his dudes in a 1v74 fight. Okay, that's not true. The real reason I came over here was for Flame Grant Me Strength, which I had initially thought was Power Within. It does increase physical and fire damage by a percentage, as well as stamina recovery speed, but it does not set me on fire. Personally, I was gonna allow this, but I never actually got around to equipping it. I admire this man's dedication to not letting me open my map. Anyway, it's time to siege Redmane Castle. Thanks to sitting in Altus Plateau, the impassable bridge is now quite passable, so no issues there. Then I do this totally unnecessary fall, but it worked out in the end. Unfortunately, there are chest-high walls here that I am unable to scale, so looks like General Radahn is off the table, which also means the DLC is out, but more importantly, it means I have to find another shard bearer that I can access to get into Lane Dale. And this is where we have a bit of a problem. Rennala and Radahn are off the table, so is Malenia, as we don't have a way to get to the consecrated snowfield yet. That leaves Rykard and Mohg. Now, I'm not sure if it's possible to get to Rykard. In my normal Volcano Manor path, there is a jump, but I don't think it's mandatory, so there's probably a way around it. However, the actual fight would be extremely boring. I've done it before several times, just grab a weapon with bleed and stand in his fire tanking the hits. It's doable, but dull as hell. So I decided I wanted to do Mohg instead if I could. Which means I have to do Vari's quest, step 1 of which is to shit-talk the 2 fingers. Step 2 is murder, and for this he gives me some severed fingers because that's totally normal. I'm equating the festering bloody fingers to the cracked red eye orb, so they are totally acceptable. As such, I invade Magnus and totally don't get annihilated in one hit or anything like that. After defeating him absolutely on the first try, I return to Vari, who then says step 3 is to cover this piece of cloth in the blood of a maiden. He says normally this would mean the initiate kills their own maiden, but as I have no bitches, any old maiden will do. There are actually several choices for this, but I always just use the dead girl at the church near the Frenzied Flame village. I return to Vari again, who tells me I have passed all the trials and he cuts off my finger. And with that, I kinda regret joining this cult. This ultimately awards me with the Pure Blood Knight's Medal, an item that can be used to teleport to Mohg Palace. It's like a broken homeward bone, alright? So a purist of the run would probably have not allowed this and instead went to try to fight Rykard, but honestly, I just didn't want to do that. Rykard's fight without the Spear Hunter is so boring. At least Mohg has some fun in him, so for the sake of slightly more interesting content, I allowed the use of the medal. Which means it's now time to fight Mohg, Lord of Blood, at level 31 with a plus 14 Zweihander. 340 damage, it's actually better than I expected. My first attempt went way better than I thought it would, but it still ended up with me face down in a pool of someone else's blood. But speaking of blood, Mohg is susceptible to bleed, so I decided to backtrap and grab another classic weapon, the Uchigatana. However, it being completely unupgraded meant I was relying entirely on the bleed proc because holy fuck that damage is bad. Despite it looking like my sword is made out of used tissues held together with dental floss, I was able to get him to phase 2 where a new problem presents itself. Nihil. Since I am unable to use the Purifying Crack tier or Physic at all, it means that if I'm ever left without at least 2 heals and decent health, I flat out lose. Fortunately, that didn't happen here, though I did die shortly after to a totally and easily avoidable attack. Honestly, because of the absurdly low damage, I actually just went back to the Zweihander because Mohg is pretty easy to stance break. He has this weird thing where when he enters his idle walking animation, you can just hit him and his attacks are so slow, you can like 99% of the time just get away with it. This allows not only free damage, but the ability to keep up pressure to break his guard, and his recovery is so long there's even enough time for a free swing before the riposte. With each passing attempt, I was getting stronger and stronger, edging my way closer and closer to finishing him off, but something was still missing, a key component to any Dark Souls 1 run. The humble throwing knife. Now, obviously these do virtually nothing for damage, I'm not JK after all, but what they can do is keep the opponent's poise from regenerating, meaning if I can't get a big juicy swing in, I can at least chip their posture down for when I do land the final blow. I only really intended to use them during phase 2 as he flies around and creates distance a lot, but they sure came in handy as this attempt, the one right after I bought them, is the one where the Lord of Blood perishes. I then do the very logical thing of dumping all of his runes into health with a touch into strength and dex, and with 2 shard bearers dead, it means I'm able to get into Lane Dale provided I can get through Draconic Tree Sentinel. But I mean, I literally just murdered a demigod. Do you think dude on fire breathing horse is going to be an issue? That's not a joke, he stood no chance. Alright, so to get through this area, all I gotta do is jump over this little fuck. I actually was initially worried because I don't remember the layout of this dungeon, but if you ride the lift down, then drop off this side here, it pretty much puts you exactly on the street where the same way parkouring over the houses would, so no trouble at all. At first, I wasn't able to get up the dead dragon's wings, but then I did some classic Souls jank and it was fine. With that, it's just a straight shot to Ghost Free. Now, this fight could have gone much better. I mean, I won on the first try, but I didn't really win by being good so much as I just face tanked a few attacks hoping the trade would go in my favor. You can roll his Earth Shatter Stomp, but it's just much easier to jump over it. Obviously, I can't do that though. That being said, it's just Ghost Godfrey, so not an issue. You know, I remember these assassins being tougher, but maybe I was wrong. Time for Omen King Morgott, king of a single chair in the middle of a big-ass room under a tree. Seriously, lore buffs, what does this man govern? Leaves? Alright, I deserve that. So Morgott and Margit, for that matter, aren't much different than normal for me. In a normal run, I would jump over his tail swipe for an easy jump attack. But for the millionth time, I can't do that, so dodging through for a stabby poke is just as good, and after only 2 tries, the king of Omen is the king of oh man, that sword is painful, please kill me, and I did. With that, I have reached what I consider the halfway point of the game and can kindle my Estus Flask up to 8+5s, which should be more than enough to carry me through most of the fights going forward. I wonder what the weight limit of these elevators are, like seriously, someone should make a video over that. And here is where the run dies, not with a bang, but with a little tiny gap. Or does it? Now, I know what you're thinking. Doom! Lion's Claw didn't exist in Dark Souls, what are you doing, dude? And you're right, the Ash of War Lion's Claw did not exist in Dark Souls 1. But front flipping with a sword did. The Abyss Greatsword's two-handed R2 attack is a front flip where you bring the sword down. It is functionally the same attack. Whether you count this or not is up to you, dear viewer, but I do. I then pick up the level 3 smithing stone belt bearing, which ultimately allows me to buy as many smithing stones as I want up to my arbitrary level cap of 15, then I return to the Mountaintops where my dreams of being Elden Lord are once again stolen from me. The first ledge on this bridge is jumpable with Lion's Claw, however, the next one is simply too high. I spent some time on an alt character trying out various weapons attacks to see if any of them had a sort of leaping ability. The Giant Crusher also has a front flip style attack, and of the weapons I tried, that seemed the closest. However, that one also doesn't work. Now, full disclosure, I did not test every single weapon in the game, much less every single weapon's entire moveset and cross-check it with Dark Souls 1's weapons. That seemed a bit excessive. But there are multiple Ashes of War that should allow you to make this jump, and I think the closest to a Dark Souls 1 attack is the Ground Slam and Golden Slam. This move has you leaping into the air and come slamming down on your butt, very similar to what Ornstein and Smoke can do in their encounter. There are two problems with this though. The first is that these Ashes of War do not come default on any weapon, meaning we need to use Hugh to assign them to an armament, but of course that kind of action did not exist in Dark Souls 1. The second problem is, as you are likely aware, ONS are in fact not the Chosen Undead. Boy howdy, I can't wait for some every character is the Chosen Undead moving backwards and forwards through time conspiracy, but as you can see here, it does allow you to get up over the ledge, but it's not allowed. So, to my knowledge, the only way up is to use my legs and jump. And this is where I would consider the run dead, the point where John Dark Souls is not able to progress, not because of some world-destroying demigod, but because of every mid-2000s game's favorite thing, a chest-high wall. Funnily enough, there is another ledge literally right after, so you would think this run is double dead, but you can actually just sprint jank your way up that one. For fun though, I decided to just press onward and see what the rest of the game would look like under these restrictions. It's smooth sailing up to the fire giant where I accidentally comboed a heavy attack instead of waiting, so I had to dark sign out and start over. The next attempt was the winning one. It only took me 10 minutes, truly a death by 1,000 paper cuts. And at this point I use his runes to buy the wrong set of smithing stones because I'm illiterate, but after realizing my mistake, I level my Zweihander up to 15, the max for this run. Now I have to get up this chain. Lion's Claw lets me jump onto it no problem, then you can also jump onto the dragon's nose where you can then jank walk your way onto its head. The final ledge, however, seems to be impossible. I had hoped that chip thing there had accurate mesh collision, but having done some game dev work myself, I'm almost 100% certain that it only looks like it's missing some rock, but is actually a flat cylindrical collider. Meaning, this jump is never going to happen no matter how hard I try to twist and turn myself. As such, it's another L and we had to jump like some kind of Mario knockoff. Oh wait, L for Luigi. Melina then tells us a story to cheer us up after that embarrassing leap. It goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a woman named Melina who was so disappointed in her tarnished friend that she set herself on fire and died. The end. I then run through Farum Azula with no problems at all. Please ignore my lack of runes, dropping down onto this ledge, then all the way down, making my way inside and to the Grace. Time for what I assume to be one of the hardest fights in the whole run, the Godskin Duo. In a normal playthrough, this fight has the potential to be an absolute ball ache, so doing it while under-geared and without access to the poise-destroying strong jump attack ability kinda absolutely blows. My usual strategy for this clusterclick of a fight is to take down the Apostle, then try to keep it a 1v1 until the fight ends. Not a bad strategy, but that's easier said than done because these two doorknobs couldn't coordinate themselves out of a paper bag. When I finally did get the noble to roll around, the impressive length of my sword allowed me to safely poke him from a distance, which helped hurry the fight along. No, wait, I'm not into this! This attempt was going good until I accidentally comboed the heavy attack again, but the noble made sure to same minute ship me back to the Grace, so it doesn't matter. After a couple more skill issues, I decided I need a change of tactics, so I went to Gostock to buy another tool, the buckler. My plan was to still kill the Apostle first, but that wasn't going so well for me. So I decided to just try and parry down the noble to phase 2, and then it should be easy from there. What I forgot was, I haven't parried anything in ages. Yeah, little rusty. This is one of those things that I find annoying. The noble was doing his roll attack, but the Apostle decided to try and hit me. To avoid it, I had to dodge, but in doing so, it caused the noble to be able to slip around the pillar and hit me. 0 out of 10 wouldn't get flattened again. Eventually though, I was able to get a good run where I managed to 1v1 them and bring an end to this god-awful fight. Can I just clip over this railing? No? Okay, I guess that works too. Next problem is this rock face, exacerbated by the fact that the lightning chicken and his soon-to-be deep-fried groupies won't leave me alone. I'll just cut to the chase here. I did not find a way to get over that ledge, however it might actually be doable with the whatever the name for the skip of this area is. I was able to walk off this ledge, which ultimately allowed me to get down to where the elevator is. But Lion's Claw doesn't have enough height to clear the railing or even land you on top of it. I tried from this ledge as well, though it doesn't work either. Then I noticed the pots. Well, that was easy. And Lion's Claw can clear the little goblet banister things, meaning with good aim, you could make your way around. You can also just casually walk up this side, and over the goblets. Alright then. But I will be honest though, I did not fully check if this was possible. I looked up how to do the skip, and you need to jump around a few pillars, which I think the first few you could do with Lion's Claw, maybe, but the last one should definitely be too high for that. So ultimately, I just jumped over the ledge and continued on. Which brings me to our next big fight, Malekith. First, a question though, does anyone actually fight this tree sentinel? I've only ever done that twice. I remember when the game launched, lots of people had problems where they would fight Malekith only to get lightning bolted from outside of the arena by DTS. But that has literally never happened to me. He's so close to phase transitioning, just push the attack! This game is bullshit. One of the things I always wish for with this fight is that it would last longer. Malakath has paper skin and already broken glass for bones, and in this case I guess I finally got my wish. Too bad I had trouble lasting long. But I've always considered this to be an easy and fun fight, so like a half a dozen attempts later, Destined Death was once again freed, or whatever we just did, made the lands between contemplate morality. Moving right along, it's Gideon who casts the legally distinct due to international copyright laws beam, and it fucking hurts. Doesn't hurt as bad as not using a Stake of America, so I have to run all the way back anytime I fail. Fortunately, Gideon, like many Dark Souls 1 PvPers, is weak to the age-old tactic of walk forward and hit one button. Gotta hit him with a point down. Next up is Godfrey, one of the best fights in the game, but this feels a little bit familiar, doesn't it? This wasn't a terribly hard fight, my deaths were just me remembering how to actually weave between his attacks mostly, and I even decided to end it with the power of throwing knives. And that means it's time for the final fight. At first I tried to play dodge heavy, but then I remembered Radagon could be parried, and boy can he be parried. Pretty much every swing of his hammer, save for the leaping attacks, can be brushed aside by my tiny steel dinner plate, making this a relatively painless encounter after I remembered how to actually fight him. The bigger problem, if you can believe it, is Elden Beast. He has two, well technically three, attacks I was worried about. The first is the single ring explosion attack. Fortunately, I did find if you time it right, you can manage to barely get outside the AoE's explosion. The second attack is Elden Stars. I was less worried about the damage and more worried about not having the heals to deal with it and the other two attacks, as I went in thinking I would just need to tank the damage. To this day, I still don't know how to get away from this attack. I remember the speedrun strat of like ducking under his arm and now you can use Torrent, but I don't know. The final attack I was worried about is of course the triple ring explosion. Yeah, no, that's not escapable like this. I tried to use Lion's Claw to clear the ring, and at first I thought I made it, but on closer inspection I took damage, meaning I simply hyper armored through the attack in style. Throwing knives are absolutely goated, prove me wrong. Since I didn't notice the first time, I did try to Lion's Claw over the triple ring, but I realized even if I did clear the third one, I was way too far away from the edge and would have gotten blasted, so I tried to just block the attack. Instead I face tanked it, but hey, we livin'. Without heals and on minimal health, it was a race to kill the Elden Beast. Luckily, poise damage go burr, and with that, John Dark Souls was able to kill the bosses he set out to, but not really able to complete the run. Oh well, so what about those Uber bosses? Specifically, I wondered what it would be like to fight Melania and PCR as Mr. Souls, so I headed to the village hidden in the swamp, hidden in the cave, hidden in the western part of Liurnia. Hey, I found the filly. Sort of. I speak to this man who's giving me a face that I wish he would stop, and he says something like, "Bro, here's half a plate if you find Latina, give her my Instagram." Next stop is Castle Sol, and since I can't go my normal Spirit Spring route, I instead have to get boned by these skeletons who think it's humorous to slap me around. I was curious to know if you could do the setup for the bow cheese, and it does seem possible to at least get on the ledge, but I slipped off before I could try and I didn't feel like doing it again. Serious question, is it even possible to roll this? I don't think I've ever done it, and my normal strategy is to just play around it, like running in and out of his range, baiting it and other attacks, and following up with a jump attack of my own, though in this case I couldn't do that last part. Regardless, throwing knives were actually super useful in this fight. Half of his attacks are get off me moves, so being able to keep his poise down from a distance made him much easier, and in the end, the commander is command done. With that, I now have a completed dinner plate, which means I can access the better frigid outskirts. First, however, I make a quick stop to buy the composite bow to be used later, as well as a full stack of arrows. Now, technically there are no items in Dark Souls just called arrows, but there are the standard arrows, which is a good enough substitute for me, but if you think that breaks the rules, just wait. I head north to Ordina Liturgical Town, where I get to use FromSoft jank to my advantage. All those years of being trapped in narrow hallways paid back 1,000-fold. Unfortunately though, I am not able to access this altar from below, but I'm hopeful if I can get above it, maybe I can worm my way in somehow. This high up one is pretty easy to get to, you just have to climb a couple ladders from the ground floor, no problem, same with this one off on the edge of town. However, I don't think I'm able to get to the one in the center of town, or the one from a second ago on the ground floor. I tried to get there from this ledge, and again from this one, but neither seemed to work. I know in earlier builds of the game you could just jump around the gate with Torrent, but obviously I can't do that here, and I think it was patched out anyway. Truth be told though, I don't really mind that. I do not expect Melania to be difficult. Sure, I usually use jump attacks on her, but that's more for the extra poise damage. It's more for consistently breaking her stance than it is raw damage. So replace those with sprinting attacks and the fight is identical really. You could say I bent the rules for the main game, why not now? And to that I would respond, because for you, dear viewer, all it would amount to is, she's the same but took longer, plus 1 or 2 waterfowl deaths, and that's it, so I'm okay with skipping her. Now, how do I get out of here? Well, that's one way. Unfortunately, even with unlocking the power of Lion's Claw, I cannot climb over this ledge. But I did go ahead and use the teleporter just to see if the DLC itself was even possible. First though, that means I have to beat Radahn. Without Torrent, it is kind of a long walk, and I forgot about the tech where you run away to make his AI come to you. I was worried about his rain of arrows attack because every time I was on Torrent, they were able to keep up with me, meaning they are super fast in their tracking and hit like a zillion times a second, but that didn't happen. Like, I was able to just outrun the arrows. However, once I had closed the distance, the fight was as good as over. I mean, sure, I don't have a super-powered max weapon, it's only plus 15, which I think is about the intended level for Caelid, but I mean, I have so much health, even the great General Radahn can hardly put a scratch on me. Before continuing, I go to the Isolated Merchant in Dragon Barrow and buy a stack of Serpent Arrows. Now, before you get upset, correct, Dark Souls 1 did not have Serpent Arrows, but it did have Poison Arrows. Elden Ring has Poison Bone Arrows, both fletched and not, but those require crafting, so I'm just equating the Serpent Arrows to the traditional Bone Arrows. And now it's time for the DLC. Yay! I have a confession to make. I don't really like the DLC. I mean, the bosses are fine, Dancing Lion kind of blows chunks, but overall the bosses are okay. I didn't enjoy it. I think my problem is that it was another big open world collectathon, which came after the base game of being a big open world collectathon. And I played literally hundreds of hours of the base game, so when the DLC came out and it was, okay, but do it again, I was kind of like, nah, I'm good. It's not bad. I do not think it is a bad DLC. I just wasn't on board with it personally. Speaking of collectathon though, as you probably guessed, the Shadow Fragments do not have a Dark Souls 1 equivalent, which means I now have to try and beat this DLC while ignoring the whole mechanic of the DLC. There are only 3 mandatory bosses, Mesmer, Romina, and Promised Consort Radahn, but on this particular run, there's actually a 4th, Rolana. Normally, you can just go around Castle Insys using the Spirit Spring, but no. As such, I actually have to fight her. And I can already feel the pain of not only having 0 shadow level, but also a plus 15 weapon. Now, you might be tempted to say that this is just a get good moment, and you're not completely wrong, you're just not completely right either. She's super easy to parry once you can get her attacks down, though I admittedly do struggle with doing that. After like an hour of trying, I was fairly confident in getting her to phase 2. The problem is when she decides to moonblast the ground. I wasn't at full health here, but this absolutely obliterated my health bar, and I don't think that would have made much of a difference anyway. Obviously, I can't jump it, and I don't think you can roll it. I was never able to. Vextra claims it's risky to roll, implying that you can, but it also says she only does the attack at around 30% HP, and like, Jane, get a ruler. Yeah, no, bullshit. Immediately, I wondered if I could jump it with Lion's Claw, but the next time it showed up, I fat-fingered the controls and just fucking died. I then spent like another hour just trying to get her to do it again. I got super comfortable with her phase 1, but for phase 2, I didn't even try and fight her, I just tried to stay alive, which was honestly part of my problem. In the end, I got tired of waiting, I just turned on Cheat Engine to lower her health and wait and see. Unfortunately, it looks like I got clipped by the damage. Even if I can hyper armor through it, I don't think it would work. Because this attack is basically unavoidable, it means I would need to rely on RNG to get her through phase 2 without her ever doing it. Now, if the attack only came out after she drops below, say, 25% health, I might be able to burst her down with a well-timed bleed proc on a riposte while she's poisoned. The problem is, as I showed earlier, she can do the attack at any point after she starts phase 2, and bursting down 50% of her health with this setup is not gonna happen. If I had worn some highly magic resistant gear, maybe I could have tanked it, and admittedly I didn't try to block it because it put you in a special knockup animation, so I just greatly assumed it's unblockable. In the end though, I'm okay with this. I don't really mind not getting by her. Technically the challenge died ages ago with those stupid little cliffs, so no, John Dark Souls cannot beat Elden Ring.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this week's video. This was a lot of fun. I didn't expect the Radahn jump. And then I also just kind of forgot about the Renala one, and when that happened I'm like, oh no, what do I do? Guess I'll go fight Mohg. But it was a lot of fun. Maybe one day I'll come back to this and finish all of the other bosses, but I don't know. But also, Again, a big thanks to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to click the link in the description, or to just go to expressvpn.com/doomwolf and check out how they can help you take back your internet privacy. And we have a winner. It's Unreproachable Name. Congratulations, you are this week's Grand Champion.